Well, prior to the moon landings, back in the 1960s, say 1963, 64, 65, they did these various tests at the Langley Research Centre, where they had these giant cranes. They'd suspend the astronauts sideways via wires, which would relieve them of their weight and allow them to simulate the moon's gravity. Now, they did these tests in and out of the spacesuits, and with the tests where they had the spacesuits, the heavy backpacks on, they found out that even with these backpacks on, they could jump as high as 14 feet on the moon. Okay, we never see any pictures of them bouncing that high on the moon.
Oh, bullshit. No, I saw the Apollo 16 and they were bouncing pretty... They were jumping pretty high.
That's a bit of an inconsistency there, because first of all, earlier in that mission we see John Young doing the jump salute, where he jumps to support, to salute the flag. He has to squat, crunch his knees down before he can jump to knee level, right? Here he seems to be jumping 4 feet high without so much as even bending his knees.
Well, how can you tell he's behind the rover?
Well, we can see his legs. He doesn't vaguely see his legs. We see barely crunches down. We can see he's not squatting down. You'd see his head, sort of shrinking significantly if he was crunching his knees down, bouncing up and down like on a trampoline.
Well, maybe he caught a good wind.
Got a good wind. I doubt it.
Well, no, hold on. I know I can beat you on this one, Jarrah, because I'm a fucking propagandist, and I always beat down all you Apollo Moon conspiratards. So you just wait. Hold on. Okay, here. Okay. If we didn't go to the moon, then why has anybody said anything? Because no two people can keep a damn secret, and there must have been millions of people that knew.
Well, to be more precise, it was about 750,000 people, but yeah, that's obviously a lot of people. Now, it's first of all, the organisation is obviously decompartmentalised. You got persons building this rocket here, based on the specifications that NASA has done. You got the people in Houston. Now, the thing about the guys in Houston, okay, they just simply read what's on their monitors and they make decisions from it. Okay, they don't need to know or care where the data comes from. The data that they're reading comes straight from the NASA Deep Space Network, which is obviously NASA-controlled, radio facilities, who are allegedly receiving these signals from space. But all they really need to do is they just need to get all these prearranged tapes and data and that sort of stuff. They just plug them in and just relay them over the telephone lines to the guys in Houston, and they just say, "Hey, this came from the moon." Doesn't have to come from the moon.
All right, hold on. You got to slow down, because I have the same mentality as Jay Wendley and Phil Plait, so I'm not very smart, and I'm kind of slow like Killian, and I can get really mad, and my face can get real big and puffy. But what you're trying to say is that, I think, is that not everybody saw everything that was going on.
Not everyone saw what was going on. The guys at Houston could have easily been fooled by simulated data. Okay. Furthermore, the Soviet Union, they had their own space program, the N1 project, which was basically a project to build, a Saturn-sized rocket, and basically they were probably going to fake their own moon landing too. But that project, that involved about pretty much the same number of people as Apollo had, thousands and thousands of scientists and engineers and designers and whatever. Okay, they built this enormous rocket about the size of the Saturn V. They tested it 4 times and it exploded 4 times, and what did they do? They covered it up for 30 years. No one outside a tiny Soviet elite ever knew of those launches.
So you're saying, no, hold the fuck on. You're saying that the Russians, the ones that put the first satellite in space, the first dog, the first person, the first woman, the first space station, first everything, we're going to go to the moon too.
Trying to, or supposedly trying to.
Well, how come I never heard of that?
It was covered up for all these years. And nowadays that it's been declassified. It was all revealed after the Soviet Union collapsed. So we now know that they did indeed have this gigantic rocket. They did indeed have this enormous moon project. And it involved thousands and thousands of people.
Well, why didn't NASA tell us that they did that? Did NASA know?
Well, they had...
Or was it top secret or some shit?
They had... Excuse me. Yeah. Oh dear. My eyes water when I cough at times. Okay. Well, the CIA had satellites of the satellite photographs of the launch site. Okay. Yet they didn't pressure the Soviet Union when they denied it that they were even in the race to begin with. After the moon project, after the Apollo program, they actually denied that they were even trying to get to the moon in the first place. It was as though the N1 had never happened in the first place, and yet the Americans, they had pictures of the launch site, yet they let the Soviet Union get away with it, you know. And when you look at the history, if you look at history records, you find that as early as 1963, the Americans, they were selling wheat to the Soviet Union. Okay, it was all these free trade deals, just like what the Americans do with the Chinese nowadays. It's all free trade, you know, shake hands behind people's backs, you know, send you stuff here, you keep quiet about that. And nowadays, the Soviet Union, just like every other space program except for the Chinese, nowadays the Russians and the Europeans, the Canadians, etc., they're all working together on various joint space flights. They're working together on Mir, they work together on the International Space Station, they work together on all these various flights to in Earth orbit or other planets. But the main thing is, most of these nations, they rely heavily on the US government, you know, their shuttle rocket to lift their payloads into space, because they don't have a heavy lift a sufficient heavy lift vehicle.
But wait a sec. Okay, so you're saying that, but I remember now, one of the Apollo missions was the Russians and us together.
Yeah, that's correct.
So why would the Russians fake? Was that fake too then?
I believe you're talking about the Apollo Simulation Test Project, or ASTP. That was simply an Earth orbit flight. That was the first in a long, sad history of joint space missions between these two supposed rival nations.
What, the Russians didn't go to the moon with them?
The Russians never claimed to have gone to the moon, but they did claim to have docked in Earth orbit with the Americans. Shake hands here, okay, we're working together now, we're all one big happy family. The only competing space nation nowadays is the Chinese, and what do you know, they happen to be the United States' best trade partner. So
are you saying that they didn't tell on us because they wanted to shake hands in space with us? Because that sounds a little confusing to me.
Well, first of all, the wheat deals, that was the price for secrecy, and also you've got to remember too that the Russians, that no doubt that they faked Leonov's spacewalk. You know, that was filmed in front of a blue screen. There was a interesting book called Russia's Space Hoax by Lloyd Malin. It was a science.
Well, we told on them, didn't we? What we tell on them?
Well, the Russians, first of all, Lloyd Malin, he released this article about how the Russians' missions were faked. Okay, and he was effectively badmouthed by the US government. Just the same way they badmouthed Bill Casey and Renee and all those other people who believe that the missions were faked. The moon missions were faked.
So wait, so you're saying that the Russian, or the American government tried to discredit this guy for saying that Russia faked theirs? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make any sense.
Well, you've got Jim Olberg now claiming that this guy...
I thought we were enemies. I thought we hate the dodgy-ass Russians.
That's what everyone seemed to think. But now it seems they're working together on various stuff. First of all, they're the enemy. Then suddenly we start bribing them with wheat. Okay, and then we start working together.
Well, there's just too many goddamn inconsistencies here. I know I can get you. I know I can get you here. I know I can prove that we went to the moon. Well, wait a sec. Okay, sure, it was compartmentalized. There was a lot of people working on different things. But did all of them watch the Apollo moon landings on TV, like me?
All of them watched the Apollo moon landings on TV.
Well, then why the fuck didn't they say something? Wouldn't they know that it was faked?
Well, some people who saw the moon pictures on TV, some people in the world, they said, hey, this looks odd, this looks fake. Some people just accepted it as hey, it's NASA, who would lie? Why would they lie to us?
Well, it's not like they'd lose their job if they told on their employer.
Well, you'd be surprised. I spoke to Dr. Q Zhang at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Although he admits that he thinks that the what do you call it? The Chinese spacewalk was fake. He believes that the Chinese spacewalk videos, they were filmed in a swimming pool. That's what he believes. Okay, but when I asked him, do you believe that the moonwalk videos were also faked, he couldn't answer that. So basically, these guys were probably...
He couldn't or he wouldn't?
I don't know. Either couldn't or wouldn't. He didn't answer those questions. He didn't answer that. And the fact of it remains, okay, you start bad-mouthing NASA, obviously you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Well, no, I mean, who could get in trouble for bad-mouthing NASA? I mean, look at Look at that Baron character that went and tried to tell on him. They didn't hurt him, did they?
Well, first of all, he complained to his superiors about the shoddy management with North American Aviation, how badly everything was getting handled on the Apollo 1 capsule. He complained about that, and they fired him. After he went to the press as well. They went to the press, he went to his managers, they fired him.
Well, NASA didn't fire him.
He never worked for NASA, he worked for North American Aviation.
That's what I'm saying, so how's NASA bad? They didn't do anything to him.